Good evening, everyone. I know you're more interested in having snacks than listening to speakers right now. Is it right?
Right.
Come on, be truthful. Yes. And people have taken decarbonization too seriously today, right? There are more people outside in non-AC than in AC. Right? So they're actually taking this session too seriously about decarbonization. I would request if the organizers can let people come in. We're going to be having an interesting session, a very fun session. I have Mr. Maudgill as a session chair. Just look at him. All of you have been in schools. You used to have the sweet, nice, good principal, but he would always be very, very strict with a cane in his hand and a smile on his face. So he is my session chair. So obviously I am not going to run overtime, otherwise I am going to get beaten up by the cane. In our time, we used to get beaten up. Today we can't do that. So we're going to be having an interesting session. I would like to call the panelists on stage one by one. I would request the console to start playing the slides. Paucity of time, I'm not going to be reading out the profiles. They're going to be visible on the slides behind me, so you can know them. But we have a very good mix, keeping this subject of international collaborations in mind. We have people from the government of India. We have people coming from international sections, from the US, from the Middle East. So we're going to be having a very good session and talking about various aspects. Normally, those who know me as a moderator, I do not share my questions with the panelists in advance. This time I did, but there is a surprise for the panelists that maybe those questions have no relevance. Because it's going to be having some more fun and some interaction and throw in some fun and dispute into the whole panel so that you all feel more interested in listening to us. So could I have Mr. Rushman, music please? Can we have you on stage, sir? He's clicking himself while coming. He's the Director, Code Green Solutions from NYC. Welcome. Welcome, sir. Please take your seat. Can I have the next, please? Mr. Sam Mason. He's the Director. Can we have some claps, please? They've all come very far. He's the Director, Code Green Solutions at NYC. Then we have the next one, please. Unfortunately, Mr. Sanjay Seth was not able to travel today. Some restrictions because of the water logging, etc. Next, please. Mr. Milind Diore. It's an honor to have you with us, sir. He represents the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Secretary at BE. Welcome you. Next, please. Mr. Soumya Garnik, the country representative of Global Green Growth Institute. So, could we have you on stage, please? Welcome. Next, please. Mr. Ashish Jindal, he is the lead with Energy Efficiency and Cooling with NRDC. So, it'll be interesting to hear your point of view. Welcome, sir. Could we have the next, please? Ms. Kanika Kalia, Director and Head of Rajasthan BIS, again a very, very important body for all of us. Welcome, ma'am. Next, please. Mr. Jeevan Jethani, a scientist with MNRE. We heard a lot about renewable energy today. I'm sure we're going to be hearing a little bit more about that from him. Next, please. And finally, we have Mr. Joseph Prakash, Director of the Global Carbon Council, Qatar. Could we have you on stage, please? So as you see, we have a very, very good mixed bag of profiles over here. People representing various sectors. We have people who will talk about investments and money, which is the most important thing finally in the end. We have people who talk about codes, people who talk about standards, people who talk about carbon markets. People will talk about, when we talked about international collaborations, strategies and all, global leadership, the few things that came to our mind to kickstart this panel discussion. One is we hear this favorite word called global north and global south, right? And we are sitting in the global south, though hopefully we will be in the north very soon, from an economic point of view at least. There is always a dispute about, the global south cribbing that what happens to the historical emissions, etc. So we're going to be touching a little bit upon that. We're going to talk about the money part of the whole business, whether it's carbon financing or carbon markets or the way trade is driven or trade is getting restricted because of decarbonization norms in various countries. We'll try and talk about that. And from the India side of the business, we're going to be hearing what all we are doing to ensure decarbonization. Also, what are the challenges that we're facing. We're going to be keeping our discussion around that. I've requested my panelists to be a little brief so that we can have more questions and more answers and make it a little bit more interactive. I'm going to be starting with Mr. Milind. That's the first thing I want to come to the Government of India. BE has been at the forefront of leading this energy efficiency. A lot of us in our industry say that some of the standards in India are among the strictest in the world. And we know that energy efficiency and decarbonization are literally married to each other, the most important part. Just want to understand from you that now when BE is getting more and more aggressive with whether the labeling programs and other standards that have been written, how important is decarbonization while writing the standards? And what all challenges the government has faced in reaching, because I know all of us know like targets taken under Honorable Prime Minister are very, very aggressive. And yes, we also know that India has actually gone way further than most of the countries in the world to achieve those levels where we are standing today. So what are the challenges and what are the things that we are doing right now as BE to reach our goal?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, ISHRAE, for inviting me and giving an opportunity here to share and be a member of this esteemed panel. Starting with the Government of India's initiatives, particularly the decarbonization and the role of energy efficiency. You rightly said, sir, actually the role of energy efficiency, particularly when it is decarbonization, it is the first role, because when you do the energy efficiency and then you can think for the substitution of energy by renewable and other means when the demand is coming down. As you rightly said, the standards which we are being set for the appliances and the standard and labeling program, or standards we have set under the for the industries under the perform achieve trade scheme. So these are being year on year it has been stringent and strong, and these are the need for decarbonization. Without stringent and strong targets for energy efficiency, it will be difficult to achieve the higher. It will be difficult to achieve for higher energy efficient technologies. So Bureau, I think we have started a program for standard and labeling in the year 2006, and now we have reached in 2024. Initially we have started with 1 and 2 appliances, now we reached to 38 appliances. So total 38 appliances, and out of that 16 are under mandatory and 22 are voluntary. Means every year we are ratcheting up the standards, as well as we are covering new appliance into the mandatory and new appliance into the voluntary regime. I'm just giving some numbers. In the year 2014 versus the 2024, so the SNL program in the 2014 means while the Paris Agreement we committed, it was only 6 appliances. Now 4 number of mandatory appliances. Now we have 16 numbers of mandatory appliances and 10 numbers of voluntary, and now we reached to 22. The models which were we covered 10,000, now we reached to 30,000 models. And the appliances that time maximum 10 crore we being touched, now we are touching to 55 crore appliances, means we are issuing the labeling to this 55 crore appliances. So the scale of this single program is being, I think, almost covering domestic energy in, I think, 70 to 80%. Similarly, in industries also, means the PAD program which we have started for the energy efficiency norms for the industries. It was initially for only 8 sectors, now we covered to 13 sectors, and initially it was for 400 units, now we reached to 1400 units. So the scale of energy efficiency after the Paris Agreement has been significantly enhanced, and this is being leading to the decarbonization. So a lot of policy related decisions are also being taken, and this one of the important policy, you can say that when the amendment of the Energy Conservation Act, which is being came into the effect from December 22 onwards, 1st January 2023. So this act now empowers BE as well as Government of India to give more stringent norms, not only in energy efficiency, but for non-fossil consumption also. So I definitely, at this panel I say that energy efficiency in India particularly, we have driving nothing like, and it will be definitely going to help strongly for decarbonizing and also to achieve the net zero target by 2070.
Thank you, sir. We all know the work that BE is doing.
Yeah.
As an industry, we really want it. You've come up with this 24-degree recommendation.
Yes.
And we're looking for that day when you make it compulsory. The remotes do not have a button below 24 degrees.
Yeah,
so
that is already
for that day to come.
Yes.
And I'll come to Ms. Kanika. since we're talking first from in-house, from the government, from India perspective, BIS is a very dual role to play. One, we have to write a lot of codes because we have to catch up with the rest of the world. Well, many places we did not have codes written in India. So there's one aspect of writing codes in India, and at the second aspect, you also have to keep decarbonization in mind. Now, how is BIS able to keep these two things going together, developing new codes as well as keeping decarbonization in mind?
See, at the international level, the approach to sustainability is already available at the ISO level. BIS is not only contributing in this approach to sustainability in international standardization through participation in the technical committee meetings at the international level, but also we are all looking at our 23,000 odd codes and standards that BIS has formulated. And looking at each of the standard, we have also formulated consultative groups. Looking at all these standards, we have divided them into subjects, and then looking at each of these standards in a way that how sustainability and decarbonization can be built into these existing code. Like I think in one of the earlier sessions they said कि हम बहुत बनाते हैं, लेकिन जो हमारे पास existing है, उसके बारे में भी हमें सोचना है. So I am looking not only at my existing codes, but yes, new codes are also being formulated. Ma'am spoke about the green hydrogen mission. BIS has recently formulated many standards related to the green hydrogen mission as well. So the approach to sustainability now is a basic tenet that for all standards that BIS is formulating, revising, reviewing, it is the basic thing that we are looking at. Every standard, if there is an intent by the industry to decarbonize, we want an enabler in the standard. That is exactly what we are doing.
That's very, very interesting to hear about this, and I'm going to reach out to Mr. Sam. You've heard about what's happening in India. Obviously, you're aware of it otherwise also, not just by coming today. And we all would love to hear from you as to where is the US today? What are the strategies being followed out there to ensure decarbonization? Because there's always been a lot of angles to all this thing that you've had a huge amount of historical emissions, so you have a lot to catch up on today and not just give targets to the global south, etc. How is this being done and managed in-house within the country?
Sure, and thank you for inviting me as well to ISHRAE. I just want to start out with that. The US has done a bunch of interesting things. Literally, they've led with code development, energy code standards as the way to drive reduced energy emissions. Starting with the point that yes, the US is emitting, say, 20 to 30 times more per capita than developing nations, right? So we're starting at a worse point up front, but really they've led with energy code development. So both ISHRAE and IECC as ways to drive energy efficiency across all the different building systems, so from facades, HVAC, lighting, and that's on a 3-year cycle, and like it's a lot of work, but it actually has driven the general sort of energy consumption of a standard typical office building down by 50% from where we started. So that has been one piece. There's regulation. The other side of that is that the US has started to implement what's called building performance standards, so it's actual reportable energy consumption. You have to benchmark your buildings, you have to actually show your data, and you have to prove that your building is actually performing to a certain level. So again, depending on the jurisdiction or the state or the city, there's different programs that have been developed. But it is leading with the stick. Like they literally are saying, if you do not meet the requirements, you're gonna pay a fine. And that is the way that they've driven it. And it's not equitable in the way that they've done it per se. Like there are building owners that are, say Class B and C building owners in the US that do not have the capital or the funds to make these improvements that they would need to do, or to build a new building to the standards that would get them below the building performance standards. So, I think one of the commonalities that we see is the financing piece, right? Is that low cost financing is holding up a lot of this, right? And so that's where the government also has thrown money through the Inflation Reduction Act to say, we're incentivizing you to make more efficient buildings, both through tax credits and financial incentives. So it's sort of codes, performance standards, a big stick, and see what happens. We're still kind of right in the infancy of it as well. So
it's good to hear, because I know that US has a lot to catch up also because of all the political issues also.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'd like to, he touched upon a very important point from a financing perspective that plays a very important role. So I'm going to reach out and understand from Mr. Joseph on the carbon markets concept, and I know you're very actively working in that segment, and what role really carbon markets play in this entire thing? Is it really workable, and if yes, what are the good and the bad about it?
Yeah. The greater push for decarbonization started, or climate action started from Paris Agreement in 2015 or 2016 to be precise. If you see, during that time, only 10 companies or a globally organization had committed to science-based target initiative, which is called SBTI. And fast forward now 9 years, it is now the number has grown to 4,200, almost 400 times in 9 years. Companies have committed to decarbonization or net zero targets. So that means the organizations are catching up, and decarbonization not a buzzword, it is now an actionable item. Even the country is also doing the same. Almost 140 countries have taken net zero target, including India. The major challenge comes is the finance. According to the IMF assessment, according to them, around 5 to 6 trillion USD is required annually to achieve this net zero or decarbonization related strategies for all the countries put together. So that means if many countries are going to achieve by 2050, for instance, that means 125 to 150 trillion USD is required, and that without that, this actionable items cannot be realized. So carbon market plays a bigger role here. I take this opportunity to commend the work done by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. They have created the domestic carbon market for India. India is one of the leading countries who have done it. There are around 30 to 40 countries that developed this domestic carbon market in developing world, but India has been the leading player in this. Similarly, there's a voluntary carbon market also. So this carbon market, through selling of carbon credits or trading, through domestic as well as international voluntary or compliance market both put together, there is a huge amount of more than, the estimate says that voluntary carbon market itself will grow to 250 billion USD by 2050. And it doesn't include compliance carbon market, which is already created by Bureau of Energy Efficiency for domestic market here. That means if you add that, it would go multiple times. Okay, so carbon market would play a bigger role in bridging the gap on climate finance, and this would help globally everyone, not only to reduce their emissions and adopt a decarbonization strategy, and also another thing we need to understand that if somebody says I want to become net zero, they cannot become net zero in day one. It's a journey for 15-20 years, and carbon offsets plays a bigger role in that. Not to have a greenwashing of 100% through carbon offset, but slowly achieving into advanced technologies, carbon offset plays a role. So carbon market, it helps in the bridging the gap of climate finance. Second, on achieving the net zero target through carbon offsets, it plays a bigger role in that also.
That's very interesting. I want to take off from this question, and if you notice his name, Mr. Rashmi Music. It's a very, very interesting name, and he comes from the finance sector. He is representing IFC over here, and everything that's money is always music to the ears. So he's got a very apt name. And we talked about the importance of carbon markets and the importance of financing. Like talking about my colleague also. Now, IFC plays a very important role in this entire business, whether we're talking about carbon financing or the investments needed by developing countries, specifically like India, to achieve these goals of decarbonization. Now, you've been associated both with India very closely and otherwise also. Now, what role is IFC playing in getting this money together? You've heard the numbers over there, they're like mind-boggling numbers, but we have no option but to achieve those targets. So what role does IFC play in this entire business?
Thank you. So last name is Music. I'm from Bosnia. Most Balkan names end in ich.
Sorry.
And I will, don't worry, but it's hard to know. And I'll also point out this is the first conference that had a dress code, and it was came out hard after someone like me who started traveling already. So I'm wearing a shirt inspired by Aboriginal Australian art and socks with a Bosnian carpet. So I hope I pass. On a serious point, so IFC does finance in two different ways. We do direct finance, so where we place capital with local firms, and we actually also go through financial institutions as well. And it's really the financial institutions where we feel like we get that multiplier effect in the end. And we do have great case studies in places like Colombia. Let's say we talked about green buildings, we had a pre-conclave session. IFC's work there through these FIs has made more than 25% of Colombia now be certified as green in the new construction. I have been working in climate finance for 12 years, and I think the two main things that have happened is when I started, we were worried about money coming in. There wasn't enough money committed to projects to send to them. That has now been reversed. There are additional trillions of dollars. Even though that money is needed, there are trillions of dollars of institutional investors, pension funds, even commercial banks, let's say HSBC or others, who have committed to climate action. They do not have enough projects to send that money to. And they're waiting, looking for aggregators like IFC to help them push that finance. So if you're a leader in this particular space, there are ways for you to access international green finance. They will compete for you, and through mechanisms like green bonds or green loans, or even now transition finance, you actually might be able to get lower interest rate. The other thing that I think has happened, this is the other part, is the storyline of, again, when I started, it was enough to do climate finance. You could be, a brown company with one green project, and we'll take it. Financiers now, like IFC, are looking for you and asking, what is your plan? How do you plan to go to net zero? I mean, we have to remember that decarbonization means going all the way to net zero, but it's also an opportunity. So it's changing the way that we are doing business. We're not necessarily doing one-by-one deals. We're looking for long-term relationships with clients, repeat investments, so that we actually get that client all the way to net zero. We provide additional technical assistance. We are a firm believer that just providing funds is not going to solve the issue. We have to work on capacity building. We have to work on technical assistance. And then through our partners in the World Bank, we also work with the regulators to make sure that the whole world is aligned. But we do need partners through the financial institutions to really believe the fact that this is something that can be a win-win-win for everyone, that people can make money out of it. It's not just good for the planet, but it's actually good for the total bottom line of both the banks and the companies that they're lending money to.
So very interesting that there are people who want funds to get in this business, who to catch over drinks. He's available over drinks, and get his name correct, not like me, I misspelled or mispronounced. So he's out here, and I'm going to reaching out after this to Mr. Jeevan. We talk a lot about renewable energy, and we talk about the challenge we face in a country like India, where we are building up our renewable energy sources very, very fast, but our requirement of power is going up even faster. So, and I know that the ministry is doing a lot of work, the government is doing a lot of work on renewable, it's meeting its targets, but yet not been able to meet the demand that's coming in from the whole thing. Now, how do we ensure that in the days to come or the years to come, reaching 2030, 50 and 70, we are actually being able to achieve our power requirements through maximization of renewable energy?
So definitely the demand is going to increase. And what we have seen after COVID, the demand has been exponentially increasing 10 to 12% every year. And it is going to increase because our per capita consumption is still 1250 units only, which is just 1/3 of that world average. So definitely the demand is going to increase, and for decarbonization, this power has to come from the sources which don't have the carbon emission, which is renewables. So now targets, we already know about the target that 500 gigawatt to be achieved by 2030 or so. Now the issue is how we are going to achieve, that is what the question is. So government is facilitating through various schemes, policies and programs. So I'll just share the recent program, that is PM Surya Ghar, in which we are going to solarize 1 crore households, putting rooftop of say 3 kilowatt capacity, for which 78,000 rupees are being given as a subsidy. And it's very simple procedure. There is a national portal. Anybody living in India having a residential connection, just log on to the portal, apply, you will get a subsidy directly in your bank account, 78,000 rupees. Another is solarization of the agriculture. PM Kusum scheme targeting 50 lakh pumps to be solarized. Here also we are giving 30% subsidy, 30% states are giving. We have a feeder level solarization, wherein instead of putting solarization each and every pump, we are putting a solar plant at feeder level that is more cost effective. And there also we are giving 30% subsidy. On industry size, we have opened up the green energy open access rules, wherein if you have 100 kilowatt sanction load, you can buy power from anywhere through open access. So such kind of policies are available. On other hand, we have the RPO obligations for the entities like the open access consumer, the distribution companies. But to make their life easy, to make available the renewable energy at a lower tariff, we know that renewable energy is available at a potential areas like potential areas at the Rajasthan where the land is cheaper, in Gujarat, Kutch, the land is very cheaper, and the wind which is located on certain pockets. So getting power from these areas to the load center, to the other states, we have to facilitate the evacuation. We have the green energy corridors wherein we are providing 40% as a subsidy from the government of India to create these infrastructure. We have the ISTS waiver. So if you want to bring power from these pockets to your state, you need not to pay the transmission charges. So these are the facilitative policies from the government so that we can increase more and more share of renewable energy.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to be coming back to you because
Sure.
the amount of subsidies being given, just want to understand where will all the money come from eventually, because this will just keep on rising, as we said, on the demand front. But I wanted to reach out to Mr. Swamya first on this. No, the bulk of the presentations that we've had today or in other conferences on this subject, whether on energy efficiency or decarbonization, etc., a lot is always being talked from the supply side. Everybody talks about what to do, renewable energy supply side, manufacturing, energy efficiency. Everything is actually coming from the supply side intervention business. Whereas very rarely do we have talks or thoughts or suggestions on the demand side. Because there's no point that I'm going to be addressing only supply and let the demand keep on rising up. And I have this favorite sentence I always say is need less, install less, consume less. How does this demand-based intervention come and play a role? And is it happening? Or if it's not, how do we ensure that we need to also reduce our demand and not just keep on making changes with the supply side of the business?
Thank you, sir, for the question. And thanks, ISHRAE, for this opportunity to me. Yes, if we see since last 1 decade, most of the talks are happening in terms of decarbonization, net zero from the supply side only. And that is clearly linked to the economic growth. Suppose we are growing by 6 to 7% a year. So this is actually putting lots of stress from the energy sector. We need energy in all the economic activities what we will be doing. Then from where this energy is coming from? Still we are greatly dependent on the fossil fuel, coal, oil and gas, and this is going to dominate again for next 5, 7 or even 10 years. But the point here is that now when we talk about the decarbonization, we don't want to have more and more CO2 emission from the electricity generation. That is why they talk about the solar energy, the green hydrogen, the bio CNG, all these things are coming into picture. And a lot of money is going to that. If you see the per megawatt cost for all these supply side interventions is ranging from roughly about say $500,000 to even $1.5 million. So that means it is from 4 crores to even 13 crores to 14 crores rupees. So lot of talks are going on to that, and it is already concentrated in that way. But if we are also missing to the other side of the fact. The demand side is talking about the what Mr. Milind Devri said about the energy efficiency or the efficient technology efficient use of the appliances, the applications, the processes, etc. in all our economic sector. And you can see that 30% of our emission reduction can happen from the from the demand side interventions, and this is not a miracle, it can be done. And what we have seen is that with the appliances energy efficiency interventions, with the the interventions in the industrial sector, particularly through some cap and trade targets, etc., achieved, and we see energy intensity reduction to the tune of about 1% since last 10-12 years, which is a very, very welcome task. Now, just to give you an example, if we talk about the cooking sector, the cooking, where we are using mostly with the LPG, and LPG is a very, very scarce resource for us, and we are dependent heavily on the outside world for that. And if we switch over to say electric cooking, say induction cooking, or even the electric cooking system, then probably this will reduce the LPG consumption, and that is where the involvement of the demand side management is important. Just to add another one example is that we are here in the cooling session here, I mean cooling forum here, and if we see the 7,000 megawatt is the Delhi's power demand in this year, and 60 to 65% were attributed towards the cooling sector. Now the point here is that if the standard and labeling program is there is a 5-star rated product which is more efficient, but that efficient product is coming with a cost addition to that. Why the person will be interested to put more money to go there, unless otherwise an incentive is given to that. That is where our distribution companies play an important role, because the moment we introduce the demand side interventions in terms of appliances usage, this is actually reducing the peak demand of the DISCOM. And the DISCOM, I mean the electricity utilities, they are getting benefited. And that benefit should go pass on to the consumer, which will actually tempt them to use such and such things. So we have demand side management regulations in almost all states, but unfortunately that has not been enforced, or that kind of interventions have not been come to the state. So it requires a kind of interventions from the state level, from the electricity distribution companies, to actually comply with the kind of the schemes or programs of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency.
So I agree that there's a lot yet to be done on the demand side, and you talked about a good point of the electricity boards giving subsidies for people who are using higher efficient products, etc., or the government improving taxation possibly on products which are higher on efficiency or better star labeled, for example, so that you are encouraging people to buy that more. And I take this portion now to Ashish. It's always said, now right or wrong, I'm going to leave it to you, and I'm going to be after this throwing in some open questions to everyone, that decarbonization is also going to hinder development for a country like India, which is going to be growing, has to grow at a very, very fast pace. We talked about air conditioning as a penetration level, which is maybe 1/3, 1/4 of the global average. I'm giving just one example of air conditioning, but it's across board. He talked of electricity consumption is just maybe 1/3 of a global average. So we have to grow. Is it the decarbonization restricts development? Can the two go hand in hand?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm feeling very gratitude and first feeling like a festival, because first time in a panel I'm wearing a kurta. So thank you so much, ISHRAE team. So on this question, I think India is on the journey, where we can actually lead on the decarbonization pathway. Why? Because as you were saying, our 80% of the building yet to be built till 2050. And it is across all sectors. When we talked about industry, transportation, every sector. And that's why the targets which we have taken under the Panchamrit by Honorable Prime Minister, and the work which is doing by each agency, whether it is government like B, MNRE, BIS, all CSOs, industry. So I think all is are the four wheels of this decarbonization, which is actually which will lead towards the success of meeting it. And why? Because ultimately, if we see the example of PM Suryagar, I want to take example in the tier 3, tier 4 cities, where people are demanding, this is going to be like a payback of 3 to 4 years. Because, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, there is an additional subsidy of 30,000 for a 3 kilowatt plus 78,000. So this is giving a calculation that I have to pay for a 3 kilowatt, let's say 60,000. And so this is making the sense. And because of this, they are thinking, if we can reduce our bill and if we can buy energy efficient equipment, that is going to make a greater sense. So I think people are understanding it. And India, I think, as I was saying, is going to lead the transformation. We are in a right trajectory, but yeah, I think as we said, speed, scale is where could lead us to those answers, and a lot of financing, as I must say. Thank you.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I'm going to be throwing some couple of open questions, and I'm going to be requesting anyone who wishes to answer, and more than one can also contribute. There's one bit we talk a lot about decarbonization. A lot of it is being put into practice at all sectors: supply side, demand side, efficiency, etc. Now, what would be the best ways of measuring and tracking the results of all those things? Now, I could ask you to start from what is the experience out there. How do you track? I could request Milind sir and Kanika ma'am to talk about, or anyone else to talk about, what are the best ways of tracking it. Because one is selling the newer numbers. You know, that I'm selling more 5-star products than what we're selling 2 years back. But then we have a huge base of installations already existing. So I just want to understand what is the global way of, measuring and tracking efforts in decarbonization, and what would be the best way of doing it, or we are doing it already in India.
I can take a first stab from the U.S. in terms of how they're approaching this. Again, there is these building performance standards that are basically tracking emissions by building, and that is the way that they're measuring essentially how far we're making it towards the goals. And the U.S. has a 2050 net zero in general goal, so it is strictly measured by utility consumption in terms of how they're projecting future sort of targets and emissions is based on what they're seeing for current reductions. So it is a benchmarking exercise, which I think the U.S. utilities and the Canadian utilities as well also have a way of doing that. They have access to that data. Here in developing countries, it's a little bit tougher to get access to that data. So actually measuring every single building and getting the utility bills and all that sort of thing is going to be a little bit of a hindrance in terms of truly measuring how far you've made progress.
Is that happening for both commercial and non-commercial buildings, residential buildings and industries?
So the residential is voluntary at this point if you're a single family home. So if you're not in a multifamily building. Multifamily buildings get grouped together with commercial, so anything over 3 stories multifamily also has to report their data similar to the way commercial buildings do.
And that reporting is mandatory?
That reporting is mandatory. So the single family home is the place where we have the data gap. And that's, each sort of state and utility is trying to figure out a way to deal with that. I mean, I'd love to see what anybody else has to think about the single family home market as well, because I don't think anybody has a good solution for it right now.
I think you want to add something.
So I have a quick reaction on demand side. So tomorrow IFC is running a session. So if you are interested on the demand side part, come. I think we're panel 9 in the afternoon. And on the measurement, I'll link it again to finance. So one of the kind of the most exciting areas of climate finance is called transition finance. And there are actually quite a lot of information around, if you are a firm, what is it you need to go through to be able to show that you're doing this. Institutions like IFC, and again, we're a development institution, but commercial banks are doing this as well, are providing what's called SLF, Sustainable Linked Finance. That means that in return for you committing to certain step downs in GHGs, we will give you step downs in interest rate. But if you don't meet your performance indicator, your interest rate goes up. And then it's a very, again, robust way to show that. For institutions like IFC, that return on the emissions reduction is just as important as your repayment of the loan. And not meeting those targets becomes a default on your loan as well. I really personally believe that this is going to become a norm because, again, I told you in my previous answer how quickly the conversation changed from let's just do energy efficiency, 20% is enough, to all of a sudden zero carbon is the goal. And I think this idea that private institutions and firms are going to be asked, what is your plan to go all the way to net zero? You will see banks fall in line and ask that question. And if you don't have that, you won't be able to literally get financing out on the market.
That's a very, very interesting. I think both options, for me, was something new that I've learned. Milind sir, would you want to add how we're doing this in India now, from a GHG or net zero point of view?
At the point of GHG, actually, we are doing means at the B level, particularly sectoral, we are monitoring. For industries through perform achieve trade scheme, we are monitoring how much GHG reduction they are doing, and it is being verified by through third-party auditors and reported to B, and based on that data, which is being validated, we are reporting the industry how much they are being GHG reduction has been done, and it is verified through third party, so it is well validated data. It is, I don't have an objection on that, authenticated data. In case of appliances, we have some assumption-based data, but that also have some simulations and some methodologies have been devices in such a way that it have less error. So in case of domestic also, we calculate how much GHG emission has been reduction possible because of the star labeling program. In case of building also, we have some methodology to see that what are the buildings are being star rated, even the building which are being complied with the energy conservation building codes, and even the buildings which are retrofitted with different technology. They report to us, and based on that, we have some methodology and we are reporting it. So I just want to share that in the financial year 22-23, we have saved around 300 billion unit of electricity because of all these efforts in India, and this ultimately helps to reduce the 307 million tons of CO2 reduction, and this has been reported into the MOFCC, and that again reported to the binary report, which goes to UNFCCC. So at country level also, Bureau's data is being referred for reporting the energy efficiency side or demand side management, how much GHG reduction has been possible. We have also created a plan to how to achieve by 2030. So as Mr. Garnaik was talking about demand side, I just want to tell, from demand side, it is share is more rather than supply side. By the year 2030, we are going to reduce 700 million tons of CO2 from demand side. And some supply side, it is only a 630 something like that. So the focus should be more towards demand side. And we are doing, means practice are there, but some standardization still required, which will be, I think, internationally how it is being done, and we should see that when some improvements can be required, so that more accountable and transparent data can be published for GHG. Thank you.
Just a quick reaction to this. As you are talking about tracking of the carbon management, so data is the key. So digitalization of the operations is the key, which would be transparent, which would be authentic and all. So artificial intelligence and digitalization, this is going to play a major role, and this is what we are calling in the Industry 4 program. So that needs to be promoted.
So just to add, means globally we have a reporting system which Mr. Milinder also shared, the biennial update report, which each country shares to the UNFCCC. So that has the emission things, and now they want to take it further with the national inventory reporting, so which will have more robust system. But that will give you figure country level and maybe some sector level. So it is like a sort of a top-down approach. But as Mr. Garnaik and Mr. Milinder had said, like it has to be the bottom-up approach of MRV system or reporting that will give very good, solid data points to help to take policy decisions, like this scheme is working, this is not working, this is good, this is not good, which technology is working, so that will be more easier.
Okay. Yes, please.
As a standardizer, I believe whatever the stakeholders here are commenting on is the requirement of guidelines, standardized terminology, standardized guidelines, what to track, how to track, and when to track. So BIS is already working on such guidelines. Many guidelines are already available. If you talk about process efficiency, yes, many guidelines are incorporated in the relevant product standards. We are also, like Sir has commented, that in the sector of energy efficiency, BIS has contributed through interventions in the relevant product certification standards. More efficient products are now being made popular through mandatory certification as well. Like if the demand side interventions have to be done, sometimes it's through the nudge of mandatory certification. So those guidelines are already in place and some are under development, and I'm sure as and when stakeholders keep on taking interest in standardization, the replicability of this effort to the masses will definitely grow.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually have many other questions, but I can see Mr. Modular giving me those principal looks, and I can visually see the cane in his hand, because we are running a little bit over time because of the sessions today. So I'm going to be calling the panel, thanking each one of you for being here and contributing and talk. I hope we were able to achieve some part of the mission given to us of global collaborations. And over to you, sir, to summarize and thank us.
Thanks, sir. Going for any question answers also?
So I think we're running out of time, sir. I can see the timer going there, sir.
See, we have seen all the global players who are working in different fields of decarbonization, and we have been trying to understand how well we can chart a path towards sustainability, what we are generally is the lookout for today and the main theme of this conference. What finally we have been basically looking at, that yes, finance is most important, which plays a role, but instead of institutional finance or the government finance, that should be sportive in a manner that it should attract the public finance. Till the time that doesn't happen, I don't think we will be able to get to our goal. And at the policy level, as well as the greening of the planet, so many things are being done and being talked about. That's really very good. And we, as Milind said, we all know, had been in the forefront since very beginning, since the inception stage, and had been spearheading this through ECBC, through labeling of this, as well as on other matters, whatever possible. And of course, Soumya talked about demand side. Demand side, of course, is good, but at the same time, I would suggest that when we talk about demand side, it should be, the demand side should be such a way that it's not only through the efficiency, but also increasing the efficiency of the generation side by controlling this in a manner or bringing this to average level whereby we can all get that benefit. So we have seen all kind of varied this thing, but I think in that we have a path where we know how to go to our sustainability goal and teach a path, and everyone is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If chair permits, I just want to take one.
Please.
Sorry. Means like the subject is so vast and it is very less time to talk on that then. But as a proud Indian, I just want to share here that what our country is doing. So you know that I think recently the Climate Change Performance Index has been released for 2024. And India ranks 4th in the all 63 countries. So whatever we committing, we are delivering. The China is 52 position, USA is a 55 position, but India is the 4th position. So I'm happy, I'm a proud Indian, and we are delivering as we are committing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. You want to stay back?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mudgil Saab, for being a very good session chair, and thank you, moderator Vishal Kapoor Saab. You are lucky that Sir didn't use his cane because you were on time. So thank you so much, and thank you all the panelists. I would request Mudgil Saab to felicitate the entire panelists, including our moderator, for such an excellent session.
Thank you. That's okay.
I would request the two pillars of this conclave, Kapil and Ajay, please come on stage to felicitate Mudgal Saab.
White